Hey everyone, ready to make English fun?
Oh, yeah.
We all know that learning a language can be a bit of a solo journey,
Hmm.
especially when you're trying to fit it in between, well, life.
Right.
But don't worry,
Yeah,
today's deep dive is all about turning those solo missions into victories,
absolutely.
using tips and tricks from a podcast on,
Sure.
you guessed it,
Yep.
practicing English at home.
Awesome.
Get ready for some aha moments
Yeah.
because we're about to unlock some serious fluency,
Right.
all from the comfort of your couch.
Love it.
So,
Yeah.
what often gets overlooked is the power of simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to get caught up in the search for the perfect app or
Yeah.
program,
Oh, yeah.
but sometimes the most effective tools are right under our noses.
That's so true.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
What's the first gem they recommend?
Okay, so
Yeah.
it might sound a little strange at first,
Okay.
but they advocate for talking to yourself.
Talk to myself.
Yep, you heard that right.
I do catch myself muttering to my plants sometimes.
Sure.
Does that count?
Maybe.
But seriously,
Yeah.
how does this actually help?
Well, there's a fascinating psychological aspect to this.
Okay.
When you talk to yourself in English,
Mm-hmm.
you're essentially forcing your brain to operate in that language,
Okay.
bypassing the need for constant translation.
Interesting.
It's like creating a mental gym where your English skills can work out freely
Yeah.
without the fear of making mistakes in front of others.
So it's like a judgment-free zone for practicing.
Exactly.
I can get behind that.
Right.
I guess it's kind of like how athletes visualize their performance before a big game.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, we're vocalizing our thoughts in English to train our brains.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's scientific evidence to support this.
Oh, wow.
Studies have shown that self-talk can improve language recall,
Oh, cool.
boost confidence,
Mm-hmm.
and even help with pronunciation.
Okay. I'm starting to see the value here instead of just passively absorbing information.
Yeah,
Right. We're actively engaging with the language.
that's it.
Though I have to admit, the thought of narrating my breakfast routine out loud
Ah,
feels a bit awkward.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
That's where a little creativity comes in.
Okay.
Think of it as an opportunity to play with a language.
Mm-hmm.
You can turn mundane tasks into fun little challenges.
Okay. I like that.
For instance, try giving a presentation in the shower.
In the shower.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Maybe pretend you're accepting an award or delivering a keynote speech.
Now that you mention it,
Yeah.
I have been known to belt out a few acceptance speeches while doing dishes.
Awesome.
So turning my shower into a stage.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Challenge accepted.
Love it.
What else did this podcast recommend?
Well, they highlighted the importance of technology,
Okay.
specifically language learning apps
Right.
like Duolingo,
Yeah.
Memrise,
Mm-hmm.
and HelloTalk.
Ah, yes, the usual suspects.
Yeah.
I've dabbled in Duolingo myself.
Okay.
And I have to say, those little green owls can be quite motivating.
They are.
But it can feel a bit isolating sometimes, just going through those lessons solo.
I get that.
Yeah.
That's where apps like HelloTalk come in.
Okay.
They connect you with native speakers for language exchange,
Oh, wow.
providing an invaluable opportunity for real-time interaction.
Yeah.
It's one thing to learn grammar rules in isolation,
Right.
but quite another to apply them in a conversation.
I can see how that would be a game changer.
Totally.
It's like having a built-in practice partner
Yep.
right there in your pocket.
Right in your pocket, exactly.
And speaking of practice,
Yeah.
I found that subtitles can be a great tool for improving listening comprehension.
Oh, for sure.
You know, starting with subtitles in your native language to get the gist,
Mm-hmm.
then gradually switching to English subtitles as you become more comfortable.
That's a great strategy.
Yeah.
It bridges the gap between the spoken and written word,
Yeah.
making those new phrases and vocabulary stick.
Right.
It's like having a visual aid to support your auditory learning.
Great. I also find myself picking up on pronunciation nuances and natural speech patterns when I use subtitles.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like having a built-in pronunciation coach.
Yeah, I like that.
And speaking of coaching,
Okay.
this next tip from the podcast
Mm-hmm.
might just be the key to unlocking a whole new level of self-awareness
Right.
when it comes to your English speaking skills.
Interesting.
It's all about recording yourself.
Ooh.
Oh boy, here comes the cringe.
I know, right?
I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
That initial awkwardness of hearing our own voice played back,
Oh, yeah.
it can be brutal.
It can be tough.
Yeah.
I understand the hesitation,
Mm-hmm.
but trust me, it's a technique worth embracing.
Great.
Think of it as a way to become your own language coach
Okay.
by recording yourself.
Yeah.
You can pinpoint those subtle pronunciation quirks,
Okay.
Identify any pesky filler words that might be creeping into your speech,
Yeah.
and even get a sense of your overall pacing and fluency.
So it's about taking a step back and objectively analyzing our own speech patterns,
That's it.
like having a personal language detective on the case.
I like that.
Though I have to admit, the thought of listening to myself stumble over verb tenses is a little daunting.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
What's the best way to approach this
Yeah.
without wanting to crawl under a rock?
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's all about finding a balance
Okay.
between constructive criticism and self-compassion.
Right.
Remember, the goal isn't to achieve perfect pronunciation overnight.
Right.
It's about identifying areas where you can improve
Okay.
and celebrating those small wins along the way.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in striving for perfection.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess the real magic happens when we embrace the imperfections
For sure.
and use them as stepping stones.
Exactly.
Instead of cringing, maybe we can reframe it as,
Yeah.
ooh, I hear an opportunity to work on that, the sound.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's about shifting your mindset from fear of making mistakes
Right?
to a curiosity about exploring the nuances of the language.
Yeah.
And, there's something incredibly empowering
Mm-hmm.
about taking ownership of your learning process.
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
It's like we're becoming our own language detectives,
Uh-huh.
uncovering those hidden clues that lead to fluency.
Totally. Yep.
Speaking of uncovering clues,
Yeah.
this podcast also talked about the importance of routine
Oh.
for solo learners.
Right.
They stress that consistency is key.
Absolutely.
But it's easier said than done when you're juggling a busy schedule
Oh, yeah.
and relying solely on self-motivation.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Okay.
Building a sustainable routine requires a bit of strategy
Okay.
and mindful habit formation.
Right.
Think of it like building a muscle.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't expect to bench press 200 pounds on your first try.
Right.
You start small, gradually increasing the weight and intensity over time. The same principle applies to language learning.
So instead of overwhelming ourselves with hour-long study sessions,
Yeah.
we should focus on creating smaller, more manageable chunks of practice
Exactly.
that we can consistently fit into our daily lives.
I love that.
Uh,
Even dedicating just 15 or 20 minutes a day to focused English practice
Okay.
can make a significant difference over time.
Right.
The key is to make it a non-negotiable part of your routine,
Yeah.
just like brushing your teeth or taking a shower.
I love that analogy. It takes the pressure off
Yeah.
and makes it feel less like a chore
Right.
and more like a natural part of my day.
Exactly.
And I've actually found that integrating English into my existing hobbies
Oh, cool.
has been a game changer for my motivation.
Yeah.
For instance, I'm a bit of a foodie,
Oh.
and I've started following recipes in English.
That's awesome.
Not only am I expanding my culinary skills,
Yeah.
but I'm also picking up new vocabulary
Right.
and getting comfortable with those tricky measurements.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here
Yeah.
is how we can leverage our existing passions and interests
Mm-hmm.
to make language learning feel more organic and enjoyable.
Right.
Think about your own hobbies.
Okay.
Could you follow a sports blog in English?
Oh, yeah.
Listen to music while reading the lyrics.
For sure.
The possibilities are endless.
Yeah. I think the takeaway here is that it's not about finding extra time.
Right.
It's about being intentional with the time we already have.
I agree.
And who knows, maybe
Yeah.
we'll even discover some new passions along the way.
Absolutely.
Speaking of discovering new things,
Yeah.
this next tip from the podcast
Okay.
is all about stepping outside of your comfort zone
Okay.
and embracing the unexpected.
Love it.
It's called shadowing.
Shadowing.
Yeah.
That sounds interesting.
I know, right?
Yeah.
What exactly does it involve?
Okay, so imagine listening to a native English speaker,
Okay.
whether it's an audiobook narrator, a YouTube personality,
Yeah.
or even your favorite podcast host,
Right.
and trying to mimic their speech patterns as closely as possible.
Oh, wow.
It's like becoming a language shadow,
Uh,
blending your voice with theirs.
Right.
You're not just focusing on individual words,
Okay.
but on the overall flow, rhythm, and intonation of their speech.
So it's like a vocal workout,
Yeah,
building those pronunciation muscles
right.
and developing a more natural sounding accent.
Exactly.
I can see how that would be super helpful for improving fluency
Yeah,
and sounding more confident.
for sure.
Yeah.
And there are different levels of shadowing you can experiment with.
Oh, cool.
For beginners, it might be simply repeating phrases or sentences after the speaker.
Okay.
As you progress, you can challenge yourself to shadow in real time,
Right.
matching the speaker's pace and even their tone of voice.
Ooh, that sounds like a fun challenge.
It is.
I'm already picturing myself shadowing some of my favorite TED Talk speakers,
Cool.
channeling their charisma and eloquence.
I love it. Do you have any tips for getting started with shadowing?
Absolutely.
I imagine it can be a bit overwhelming at first.
It can be. So one key tip
Okay.
is to start with shorter audio clips or segments.
Okay.
Don't try to shadow an entire hour-long podcast episode right off the bat.
Right.
Break it down into smaller chunks that you can really focus on and master.
Okay. That's helpful.
Yeah.
It's about setting ourselves up for success, not overwhelm.
Right.
And I guess it goes back to that idea of consistency over intensity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as you get more comfortable with the technique, you can gradually increase the difficulty and duration of your shadowing sessions.
Okay.
You can also experiment with different types of shadowing,
But like what?
such as script shadowing, where you have the transcript in front of you,
Okay.
or speed shadowing, where you challenge yourself to match the speaker's pace,
Right.
even if it's faster than you're used to.
Wow. I'm already feeling inspired to level up my shadowing game.
And I love how this technique not only helps with pronunciation, but also exposes us to a variety of accents and speaking styles,
Right.
which is so valuable in the real world.
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So speaking of the real world,
Okay.
let's address the elephant in the room.
Okay.
Motivation.
Right.
Let's face it.
Yeah.
Even with the best techniques and strategies,
Yeah.
staying motivated when you're learning a language solo can be a challenge.
It can be, for sure.
What's the secret sauce to keeping that language learning fire burning bright?
Ooh, that's the question, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
We talked about routine, we talked about technique,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of it comes down to mindset.
Mindset.
Yeah, it's about finding ways to stay inspired, celebrate those small victories,
Right.
and keep the learning process fun and engaging.
You're absolutely right.
Okay.
One powerful technique is to reframe your definition of success.
Okay, how so?
Instead of focusing solely on reaching a certain level of fluency,
Right.
celebrate those moments where you successfully used a new phrase,
Okay.
understood a podcast without subtitles, or even just felt more confident speaking.
I love that.
Yeah,
It's about finding joy in the journey,
exactly.
not just the destination.
Totally.
And it reminds us that learning a language isn't a linear path. It's full of twists and turns and unexpected detours.
It is.
But that's part of the adventure.
That's the fun part.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
And sometimes those detours lead to the most rewarding discoveries.
That's so true.
Speaking of discoveries,
Oh, yeah.
this podcast had one final tip
Okay.
that might just be the most surprising one yet.
Oh, I'm on the edge of my seat.
What is it?
They encourage learners to embrace the cringe.
Wait, what? Embrace the cringe. As in, intentionally make awkward mistakes.
Well,
I'm not sure I follow.
okay, so it's not about intentionally making mistakes.
Right. But about shifting our perspective on them.
Okay.
Instead of viewing mistakes as failures, we can see them as valuable learning opportunities.
So it's about reframing those moments of awkwardness as stepping stones to fluency.
Exactly.
I can definitely see the value in that.
Right.
But how do we actually embrace the cringe
Yeah.
without letting it completely derail our confidence?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
It's about creating a safe space for experimentation.
Okay.
That might mean practicing alone in front of a mirror,
Yeah.
recording yourself speaking, or even seeking out a language partner
Right.
who understands the ups and downs of learning a new language.
I love the idea of having a supportive language buddy.
Oh, for sure.
Someone to celebrate the wins with.
Yeah.
And maybe even laugh together at those occasional pronunciation mishaps.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's about remembering that learning a language should be fun,
Totally.
not a pressure cooker situation.
I agree.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another crucial point, patience.
Okay.
Fluency isn't built overnight.
Right.
It's a gradual process that requires consistent effort and a willingness to embrace the journey, cringe and all.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the key takeaway for our listeners who are on their own English learning adventures?
Ooh.
How can they take these tips and actually apply them to their daily lives?
I think it all comes down to finding what works for you.
I like that. It's about empowering ourselves to become the architects of our own learning journey.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to language learning.
Right.
What works for one person might not work for another.
Right.
It's about experimenting,
Mm-hmm.
trying different techniques and figuring out what resonates with your individual learning style and goals.
So it's a bit like putting together a puzzle, finding those pieces that fit together to create the bigger picture of fluency.
I love that analogy. And as you start to see those pieces come together,
Yeah.
your confidence will soar. And that once daunting mountain of English mastery will start to feel a lot more climbable.
It's about shifting our perspective from feeling overwhelmed to feeling empowered.
Precisely. And remember, it's a journey, not a race.
Right.
Enjoy the process,
Yeah.
celebrate those small wins, and don't be afraid to embrace the occasional cringe along the way.
That's such a great reminder. It's about finding joy in the process, not just the destination.
And speaking of finding joy,
Yeah.
let's circle back to something we touched on earlier.
Okay.
The power of connecting with others on this journey.
Right. Even though we're focusing on solo learning today,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean you have to go it alone entirely.
Exactly.
We talked about language exchange apps like HelloTalk,
Right.
but there are so many other ways to connect with fellow language learners.
Absolutely. There are online forums, language cafes, even social media groups dedicated to English learning.
Oh, wow.
It's a great way to share tips, find study buddies, and get that extra boost of motivation when you need it.
I'm a big believer in the power of community. It's so much more fun to celebrate those wins and laugh at those inevitable mishaps with others who understand the journey.
Exactly. And sometimes just knowing that you're not alone in this can make all the difference.
So true. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have?
From the power of self-talk to the importance of embracing the cringe.
Right.
But before we wrap up, I
Yeah.
want to circle back to that idea of becoming our own language coaches.
I like that idea.
What if we took that a step further?
Okay.
What if instead of seeing ourselves as solo learners,
Mm-hmm.
we embraced the role of language explorers?
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
It's about approaching language learning with a sense of adventure,
Right.
curiosity, and a willingness to step outside of our comfort zones.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that the journey itself is just as valuable as the destination.
Mm-hmm.
The more we explore, the more we discover about the language, about the world, and about ourselves.
I agree.
So if we were to give our listeners one final piece of advice,
Yeah.
one golden nugget to take away from this deep dive, what would it be?
Embrace the adventure. Don't get bogged down by perfectionism or compare yourself to others.
Right.
Celebrate every victory, no matter how small.
Yeah.
And remember that the most important thing is to enjoy the process of learning.
Right.
After all, language is about connection, expression, and exploration.
Yeah.
So go out there, explore the world of English, and have fun doing it.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into solo English learning. We hope you found these tips as inspiring and practical as we have. Remember, fluency isn't a destination, it's a journey. And you, my friend, are the captain of your own language learning ship. So set sail, embrace the adventure, and never stop exploring.
Happy learning!
And until next time, keep diving deep.